You were 4 shots back going into round two, then shot or tied the hot rounds for 2 and 3. You birdie 18 on round three, and now you've got a weather delay, and you've got hurricane. I think it was Matthew coming in. So talk about playing in the weather, because the weather came in round three in that rain and dealing with that,
Mm-hmm.
and then sleeping on that lead and not even knowing if you're playing the next day, you're not playing the next day. How that how what was your process?
Well, I was in a rebuilding state of my life. I had just the month before, September, I think it was September 3rd, I split up with my girlfriend of 3 years. It was like we were living in the same apartment together, and uh, here I am, like,
Wow, that was the month before.
yeah, yeah, it was a month before, and I had made this commitment to myself at that time that moving forward, I was going to be true to myself and what I needed in my life in a way that maybe I had sacrificed before.
Mhm.
And there was this incredibly strong sense of belief in myself that I was getting from this independence. Um, and the week before USDGC, Yuli and I played the US doubles, the last one that they ran, the US pro doubles, and we won. And that was also in Rock Hill. And
Yep.
that was a really cool feeling. We actually won that on my birthday. And that was the same day that Yuli threw that famous, um, re-tee on the par four, and he aced it.
Wow.
So we got a birdie. We were throwing three from the tee. We had the lead, and it's like the scariest hole in the course, and he aces it. I mean, technically threes it, but I mean, anyone
Wow.
who stepped on that tee pad before, knowing that he threw it into the basket from there is just mind blowing. Um, and anyways, I just really had this really quiet confidence that I was carrying with me that maybe had been subdued because I didn't feel like I wasn't comfortable in my relationship anymore.
Mhm.
I don't think that she was supporting me pursuing a career in disc golf, and I felt like that was kind of a string holding me back, and I cut the string, and I felt like, wow, like I can actually commit myself to this. And so I made this commitment, like I said, to myself. And moving forward, I only want the best for myself. I'm not going to promote products that I don't agree with just for a simple buck.
Mhm.
I want my promotion on things to be completely 100% genuine. I want them to be heartfelt, and I don't want to sell out. I want to be with the people that I think are doing the best things in the sport. And so I felt, I felt that in my body. And so there was going into the USDGC, um, I was ready to do it. I was ready
Yeah.
to like finally give myself a chance at this tournament that had always been, in my eyes, the most important tournament in disc golf, the biggest tournament.
Mhm.
Now, at the time, people who were winning world championships were getting like $5,000, which was like basically what they were getting for NTs. And DGPTs had just started. So like, USDGC, you're getting 10 to 15K. So this
Yeah.
was the premier event.
Yeah. And
And,
you got 10K in 2016.
yeah, exactly. And like, well, Climo in 2007 got 15K. And even going back
Wow.
before that, he was getting 15K. So they've changed based on sponsorship. But like, this was always the premier tournament in terms of
Hmm.
financially speaking. This is the one you wanted to win. Well, I played well the first round, and Spin TV, UC Maresma's media channel, was covering the event. And they were doing this thing that had never really been done in our sport because Jomas wasn't doing the next day thing yet, where they were doing a post round show with Jamie
Yeah.
and I forget who was working with Jamie Thomas, but they were airing it live that evening at like 9 p.m. or whatever. And so it was your way of watching highlights and for them to talk about stats and stuff like that. It was a really
Hmm.
cool thing,
That was
and we'd
awesome.
never really had that before. And so I shot just well enough to be on the lead card for round 2.
Hmm.
So I'm like pumped. Like I'm going to be on this broadcast. This is going to be sweet. Get on there, and lo and behold, the whole entire story is Discmania's young gun, Eagle McMahon, shoots hot round. And I'm like, okay, I get it. He shot a great round, but seems a little biased, but okay. And then I think he was tied with Patrick Brown in round 1, or Patrick Brown was like right next to him. I can't remember if they had shot the same score or not, but like, okay, cool. They're talking about the 2 leaders. I get that. And I forget who was in 3rd place, but they're talking about them too. Then they do the rest of the show. And at the very end of the broadcast, they say also joining them on lead card is going to be Jeremy Colling. And that was it. And I took offense to that, like
Yeah.
the whole MJ quote, and I took offense to that. No, I did. I was actually really pissed because I was really excited about watching the show because, I thought I was going to get some much warranted publicity for this.
Hmm.
And they didn't say anything about me. And I was like, hometown hero, like does well at USDGC, like nothing? What the
Yeah.
hell? Like, what, did I upset somebody? So I said, all right, I'm going to give him something to talk about tomorrow. That's what I told myself. And I gave myself the motivation to play my very best possible round the next day. And like, I can say that till I'm blue in the gills. Whether or not I buy into it and actually like turn it into a focus, or if I use it as a distraction and it takes me in a different place, that remains to be seen every round I play. But I was able to steer it into focus for round 2, and I kicked butt.
Yeah.
I shot a great round,
You did.
and I was like, all right, you're gonna talk about me today. And at that point, I think I was still trailing Eagle. I think maybe we tied second round.
You either, I can't remember if you tied him or got him by 1
Yeah,
on
I think I maybe
second
beat him
round.
by 1, but he was still beating me by like 4 strokes, 3 or
Yeah.
4
Yeah.
strokes going
Yeah.
into the
You,
3rd round.
yes. Yeah. Oh,
And
third round
so,
was a roller coaster.
so once again, yes, it was. Once again, the story was Eagle McMahon and his great play keeps him in 1st place at the USDGC. And I was like, I just shot hot round,
Hmm?
and it's the story is still like we're not. I I was like surprised. I was like, still nothing, huh? Wow. Same thing the next evening, and I was like, all right. So the next day, I birdied the first 5 holes, and at that point, Eagle had started off with I think a bogey on 1. He had this ridiculous roller on hole 2, had a putt for the Eagle, putted it out of bounds, missed next putt, took a bogey.
Hmm?
It was like, or maybe he made the putt for a par, but either way, it was like, I got 2 strokes on him there, or 1 stroke there. And the next hole, I got 1 stroke. And the next hole, I got 1 stroke. And then I had a lead
Hmm.
after I birdied hole 5. And I was like, oh my God, I'm winning the USDGC. And it's raining, and it's Saturday at USDGC. The crowd is like there, but not the way they normally are because the weather's kind of crappy.
Yeah.
And I remember just settling into this ease. And it didn't feel like the 3rd round at a major championship at this hallowed event. It just felt like here's a tee shot, here's an approach, and here's a putt. Rinse and repeat. And then do that again. And do that again. And it was like very, very easy. And I didn't feel the sense of nerves that if you were to tell me right now, hey, Jeremy, I'm going to go ahead and tell you this year you're going into the 3rd round of the USDGC, and halfway through the round, you're going to be leading the event. How do you feel? Uh, feel good. I feel good. No, I mean, like, I'm nervous thinking about that, right? If that's the case, like, wow, oh my God. That's not how it felt in the moment, like when you put yourself in a position to make disc golf your life and you dedicate everything that you have to a thing. And when you work hard for years on end to get to a place, when you get to that place, it either A, sends you back because you don't have it mentally deep down, and you recognize that you're in this moment that you've worked for basically what you feel like is your entire life, and then you crumble, or you accept it because you realize that all this hard work is for this moment. And you don't think of it that way. You don't contextualize it that way in the moment. You can accept it, and it doesn't distract you. The nerves don't don't bring fear. It brings excitement for the next throw. It brings this readiness for the moment and not the opposite, which is what happens to so many people. And so I felt at ease, and I'll never forget that approach on 18. Um, Very technically challenging shot. Anyone who's ever played Winthrop Hole 18
Oh yeah.
knows that green is diabolical. And I had a proto H1 from Prodigy, really overstable fairway driver, a hybrid driver. Actually, I'd like to go ahead and say real quick on the record, Prodigy, Mike Sullivan specifically at Prodigy, was going to go with U for their utility drivers. Those were going to be the drivers between basically the high speed fairway drivers.
Mm.
And I said, why are you going with U? If we have a U2, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Like people are going to, it's like, no, we're not going to do the U line. Let's go with H for hybrid. And he was like, I don't know why I hadn't thought of that. So that the H line, I can actually take some credit for in the naming. Anyways,
Oh, cool.
the H1 was a really overstable hybrid driver and threw it hard with Annie at the big tree at the top of the hill that you're looking
Yeah.
at when you're down on the side slope. And it just planed the ground perfectly. And I knew as soon as it hit the ground, it was going to go big skip and settle, and circle the pin. And out of my hand, I was like, oh, that's going to be parked. And it gave me a 4-stroke lead going into the final round. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I got 4 strokes going to the final round. That was when the nerves started to kind of kick in.
Okay.
I remember going over to the lunch area that they provide,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't have the big festival atmosphere that they do now. It was behind this house over by Hole 3 that they'd rent out. And anyways, Chuck Connolly was serving food, Chuckster.
Mm-hmm.
And I get over there, and I'm getting some congrats from my peers and from people who are just in the kitchen. And then somebody, I forget who it was the first person to tell me this. They said, man, this might be over. You might have won. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like they're talking about maybe there not being a final round because of the weather. And I was like, dude, it's just raining. Like, what are you talking about? And I didn't really know at the time that the hurricane was coming in that quick.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't allow myself to accept that as a possibility. So I didn't. Like if you go into the last round thinking it's already over and there's not going to be a final round, then all of a sudden you got to play the final round. You're
Yeah,
screwed.
you are done.
So I didn't think that. I went back to my routine every single night. I did the same thing. I went back and I watched probably 2 or 3 episodes of Game of Thrones, which is what I was doing every night at the time. I was at that time I'd moved into Henry and Elise's house, my best
Okay.
friends,
Yeah, yeah.
and
I know Henry.
I was living in their guest room, and I just moved in. Like I said, I was just going through this transitional phase where like I was just having my first set of independence. But like the longer I lived with Henry and Elise, my door was open and I was in the living room hanging out with them all the time. But those first few months, my door was shut and I was just kind of in my room, kind of like relearning myself,
Mm-hmm.
and like really like appreciating this like solitude. Like I just hadn't experienced that in so long. And being a public figure already, like when I go out and about, like
Mm-hmm.
it's not solitude when I'm on the disc golf course. Like I can't be that. I have to be a public figure. And so I felt this like real strength in this like aloneness. And so the doors were closed. I was watching Game of Thrones and it was time to go to sleep. And that was my routine every single night at the USDGC. And, wake up the next morning, get Chick-fil-A on my way to the course on Cherry Road,
Yeah.
and then do it again. Well, the next morning, I get I get a text message from a friend saying, hey, they've pushed tee times back an hour. Get some more sleep. And then in an hour, I get a text message from the same guy said, hey, they pushed it back another hour. And I'm sitting there thinking like, well, they'd already made a couple of changes to the course. They'd already said that we weren't going to play hole 17 at all, which is obviously a very diabolical hole in the history
Oh,
of the
yeah.
USDGC, and a very nervy shot if you have the lead. So that hole wasn't even going to be there. So I was like, wow, that's kind of a weight off my shoulders. They changed the beach hole to this like different hole that's like off the beach completely. because they were just expecting flooding and all that. And so they were trying to accommodate for a slightly shorter round, but now we're losing 2 hours. And I
Oh,
don't know if you've ever watched the USDGC, but in October,
oh yeah, I've been there.
those guys are coming in when there's no delays, maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour and a half before it gets dark.
Hmm.
Now tea times have been delayed 2 hours. Like, how are we going to finish? So, well, that was when I was like, man, they're going to have to delay this. Next message I get, Jonathan Poole. Rounds have been delayed from Sunday to Monday. And that was when the proverbial shit hit the fan. Because people have flights. Everyone's got
Yeah.
flights on Monday, you know?
Oh,
I
and
don't.
hotels and I mean all kinds of stuff.
The hotels. So people are taking shelter away from the coast inland. Where are they stopping? Every hotel they can find along the way. So these places that pros had booked up until Monday or Sunday morning weren't available Sunday evening. Somebody's already staying in that room that night to get away from Hurricane Matthew.
Oh wow, that's right.
So people didn't have a place to stay anymore. And that was when Jonathan Poole and the USDGC staff realized we don't have an option. Like, there's nothing we can do. We're not going to be able to finish the round tonight, and there's no place for people to stay the next day. We got to call a final round. And it was unprecedented. At that point, no one had ever called a final round before. So that was definitely weird for everyone. Everyone.
Yeah.
But when the call specifically came from Jonathan Poole, I nearly hit my head in the ceiling. Like, there was just like the unsureness I had of like what was to come the next day. Like, how do I prepare myself with all these things going on? And then Jonathan called me and said, I'd like to officially call you the 2016 U.S. champion. You're a major winner now, and don't look at this like an asterisk. Like, you earned this, you know. And like, he did everything he
100%.
could to make sure I didn't feel bad about it. I mean, there's always going to be my own questions, you know, like, did I have the chops to hold off Ricky Wysocki and Nico LaCastro going into that final round? Like, we'll never know. So I used the 2017 USDGC as the best chance I could to shut down any questions of whether or not I would have done well. And I shot the hot round, the first round of 2017. And to me, that was like my way of saying, like, hush, you know, like,
Gosh, I love it.
hush. I mean, it's not the same. Obviously, there's no pressure first round, but I just wanted to send a statement. And that was like the only statement I could send was like, hey man, like, this course is built for a forehand like mine, and I got this. And I was on lead card all 4 rounds at USDGC 2017, which was really cool. And got to watch one of my best buddies, Nate, take it down. And that was a really cool moment.
Yeah.
So that was also a special one. But 2016, pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was.